Elastic demand targets. So we're going to understand the difference between elastic and inelastic demand, determine which items are elastic or inelastic using determinants of demand, and use formulas. So let's go forward here. The elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded will change when other factors change. So the elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded will change when other factors change. Price elasticity of demand measures how sensitive consumers are to a change in price. Elastic demand means consumers are sensitive to change in price. So fill in the blank. The elasticity of demand, what when other factors change? So the elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded will change when other factors change. So what measures how sensitive consumers are to a change in price? So price elasticity of demand. Yes. It measures how sensitive consumers are to a change in price. So price elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand measures how much the quantity demanded will change when other factors change. Price elasticity of demand measures how sensitive consumers are to change in price. Elastic demand means consumers are sensitive to change in price. Inelastic demand means consumers are not sensitive to change in price. So consumers are not sensitive to change in price for gasoline. They will consume only a little less if the price rises a lot. So elasticity equals the percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price. So the best way to calculate this is using the midpoint method, like I said in last class. So price elasticity of demand equals change in quantity, go to the midpoint in quantity. And then that should be divided by change in price divided by midpoint in price. So that's the best way to calculate it. That's a better way than doing the percentage way. So I recommend doing the midpoint method here. It's a lot easier. Yeah, so that's the best way to do that. And you can use it for any elasticity calculation. Inelastic demand means consumers are what to a change in price. So not sensitive. Yeah. So insensitive works too. Less responsive, unaffected, less responsive, less sensitive. All those work. Yeah. All those would be correct. So the midpoint method. When measuring percent changes, you will get a different result depending on which number you start with. The midpoint method eliminates this problem. That's why I recommend using the midpoint method. So it's so yeah, it should be unaffected too. Yeah, so unaffected would be correct. If I was marking this as a test, I would mark it unaffected as correct. So the midpoint method is what I recommend. So it's change in quantity divided by average quantity. So if you had an example here, if let's say the quantity one was 20, quantity two was 100, you could do 20. So change in quantity would equal 20 minus 100 equals negative 80. And then average quantity would be the midpoint of those two. So you do 20 plus 100 divided by 2, be 60. So then you do negative 80 divided by 60 equals change in quantity divided by average quantity. So that's how you would do that there to find the midpoint method. So I recommend using this for calculating it. So when measuring percent changes, fill in the blank, the midpoint method eliminates this problem. So you will get a different result depending on which number you start with. So yeah, the answer is affected. Yes. Inaccurate elasticity. Yeah, so a different result. Yeah, so anything relating to a different result, that would be correct. Because the midpoint method is more effective, it's more accurate than the percent change. So here, when measuring the percent changes, you will get a different result depending on which number you start with. The midpoint method eliminates this problem. So in this case, you would take the quantity demanded of 12 and 8, and you do 12 minus 8 divided by the midpoint between 12 and 8. So you do that to get that. And then the prices here, you do 3 minus 5 divided by 3 plus 5 divided by 2. So that's how you would do that there. And you'd have to use more brackets the better to keep it in here. So this would be, so I'll do, so this would be Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q2 plus Q1 divided by 2 divided by price 2 minus price 1 divided by price 2 plus price 1 divided by 2. So that's how you do that. It would be 3 minus 5 because we got to be consistent. So we have to be consistent because we're doing 3 minus 5. So since we're doing 12 minus 8, we do 3 minus 5 here. Yeah. So then we would get that. And does somebody want to calculate what this would be? The top here would be 4 divided by 10 divided by -2 divided by 4. So let me know what you get for this. So yeah, if
Point
someone got
eight.
-0, sorry. Yes, it should be -0.8. Yes. Yeah. So it's price inelastic. So good job. Good job. Good try, Miss Sean. Great job, Carmela. So yeah, it's price inelastic. So it's not that sensitive to price changes. So if the price goes up, they're still gonna buy. They're still not gonna. They're still gonna. So if the price goes up, they're still gonna buy a lot of it, basically. So yeah, as you can see here, they solved it on slide 19. It would be negative. So that's just the quantity part. So they just solved the top, but they'll solve the bottom in future slides here. So I'll show you. So yeah, they have to solve the bottom here. As you can see, the top is -0.4, the bottom is 0.5. And I'll post this into the chat here. So this is how you would calculate it. And then if you divide both, you get -0.8. Yeah, so -0.8 would be the result. And so it'd be price inelastic. So coefficient elasticity, the values we get when we calculate the price elasticity of demand are called coefficients of elasticity. They tell us the relative elasticity of an item. So coefficient is 0, perfectly inelastic demand. Consumers pay no attention to price. So they'll buy the same amount at any price. So can you think of any example of that? Can you think of any example of a situation where consumers will keep buying the same amounts of a product regardless of the price? Gas. Yeah, gas is a great example. That's great. Yes. Then coefficients between water, that's excellent. Milk, yes. Coefficient diapers, yes. Coefficient is between 0 and 1 in elastic demand. So because consumers are not sensitive to price. So can you think of, yeah, so Jenny's right. So necessities would fall under that. So consumers are not sensitive to price for inelastic demand. So for necessities, they will buy them regardless of price. They're not sensitive to price. So necessities demand is not sensitive to price. So coefficient is 1, unit elastic demand. Demand is not elastic or inelastic. So if there's a 1% increase in price, there'll be a 1% decrease in quantity demanded. So it's equal basically. So coefficient is greater than 1 elastic demand, so consumers are sensitive to price. So can you think of any goods where the consumer is sensitive to price? Will buy less with higher price? Will buy much less with higher price? Yes, luxury goods. Yes. So anything luxury good related. So like luxury cars, eating out at expensive restaurants, going on vacations. If the price goes up, the quantity demand will go down by a lot. Yeah. So coefficient is infinite, perfectly elastic demand. Price changes infinitely affect quantity. So that's like something like a private jet. So if the price of a private jet went up, the people that are just moderately rich would just get rid of it immediately. So the so the price, if there's a slight price change, the quantity demand will go down by an infinite amount, basically. So it's for really far up luxury goods. So like anything like a private jet, for example. So total revenue test, each section of a demand curve has a different elasticity. The total revenue test which also calculates elasticity, shows how this works. So calculations, total revenue equals price times quantity. So calculate total revenue for the new price and quantity. So here the inelastic total revenue moved in the same direction as price. So with if it's inelastic, uh, total revenue will go down with higher quantity. So for inelastic demand, total revenue will go down with higher quantity. Elastic demand, total revenue will go up with higher quantity. So several factors help determine whether an item is relatively elastic or inelastic. Items are elastic if substitutes exist and are readily available. So if there's a lot of substitutes, it's going to be elastic. So pizza restaurants, so for example, pizza restaurants have many competitors and thus many substitutes. If one chain raises their prices, consumers can easily find a substitute. So they'll switch to the substitute if the prices become more expensive for one pizza restaurant. Items are elastic if the item represents a large portion of a person's income. For most people, airline travel is extremely costly. Although flying has few substitutes, many people will simply choose not to travel if prices are too high. Yeah. So they'll use an airplane less if the prices are too high. So they'll buy less flight tickets if prices are too high. So the item is a luxury. So food in general is a very inelastic item. When discussing the market for restaurant food, however, the good is considered luxury and thus elastic. Consumers have a lot of time to adjust to change in price. Gasoline is inelastic in the short run, but is elastic in the long run. This is because consumers will find alternative fuels and adjust their habits at given time. Items are inelastic if substitutes are hard to find or may not exist. Electricity is necessary and good for most people. If the price of less electricity increases, we may complain about it, but we'll certainly pay it. The item is a small portion of the person's income, so a cup of coffee generally costs very little. Thus, even a large percentage increase in price may go largely unnoticed by the consumer. The item is a necessity for an elastic, so consumers are often given little choice about whether to take a prescription medication. They will pay almost any price if it means feeling healthy, so that would be an inelastic good. Consumers have very little time to adjust to change in price. Inelastic consumers may find alternative fuels and adjust their habits in the long run, but they are not sensitive to increases in gas prices in the short run. So cross-price elasticity of demand, another type of elasticity is the cross-price elasticity of demand, which measures how strongly two substitutes or two components are related. So here, to calculate this, you would take, so you would do change in quantity of A divided by change in price of B. So in this case, what you'd have to do is you'd use the same formula, but the difference would be you would take the change in quantity of A So you take these numbers here to start. So change the quantity. So 14 minus 18 divided by 14 plus 18 divided by 2. And then you take these numbers here. You take the price for the other one and use on the bottom. So it would be in this case 19 minus 21 divided by 19 plus 21 divided by 2. So that would be -4 divided by 32 divided by 2 divided by -2 divided by, so divided by 2, and that'd be -4 divided by 16 divided by -2 divided by 20. We get -0.25 divided by -0.1. Yeah, so that's what we would do to get the cross price elasticity of demand. So I'll take a screenshot of this and send it. So it should be, so if you do this here, the top would be 0.25 like we found here. And then the bottom would be the prices for B. That we get 0.1 and we get 2.5. Yes, exactly. So goods with positive cross price elasticities are substitutes. So in this case, these would be substitutes. So you could substitute one for the other. And goods with negative cross price elasticities are complements. So this one would be substitutes because it's 2.5, it's positive. Cross price elasticity near zero means the goods are unrelated. So if it's near zero, the goods are unrelated. So it'd be like if we were comparing apples and cars, they're unrelated. So it would be zero. Yeah. So income elasticity of demand, another type of elasticity is the income elasticity of demand, which measures how much quantity changes when consumer income changes. So income elasticity of demand, it's calculated very similarly. So it would be change in income divided by change in price here. Sorry, it's change in quantity divided by change in income. So the here we'd take the change in quantity. So we'd take 45 and 55 to start. So it'd be 45 minus 55 divided by 45 plus 55 divided by 2. And then we divide that by the income, which is 700 minus 900 divided by 700 plus 900 divided by 2. So you do that. And we'll take this here, bring this down, bring this down. And someone already had to say got 0.8, so I'll see what I get here. So -10 divided by 50 divided by -200 divided by 800. So that's what we'd have to do here. So we get these numbers here. And then the -10 divided by 50 is -0.2. And then divided by 0.25. So that would be -0.8, roughly. So that's what we would get for that. So roughly -0.8 here. So yeah, it should be actually my mistake. It should be positive 0.8. So the negatives would cancel out, so it'd just be 0.8. So it's 0.8 here because it would be negative divided by negative, so they would cancel out. So we get 0.8 as the income elasticity of demand here. put that in the chat here. So we got that, and now let's see what they get over here. So here, 0.2 on the top, 0.25 on the bottom. So it'd be negative 0.2 divided by negative 0.25. And then it would be 0.8 because the negatives would cancel out. Yeah. So normal goods have positive income elasticity. So we got a positive income elasticity here. So it's a normal good because negatives would cancel out. 45 minus 55 is negative 10. 700 minus 900 is negative 200. So those negatives would cancel out if we divide them. And then if below 1, it is income inelastic, so demand rises slower than income. If above 1, it is income elastic, demand rises faster than income. Inferior goods have negative income elasticity. So the only things you have to worry about, don't worry about 4 and 5, only worry about 3 and 4, 3 and 6, sorry, 3 and 6. So inferior goods have negative income elasticities, normal goods have positive income elasticities. So only worry about these two things here. The 4 and 5 don't matter. Don't worry about that. Just 3 and 6. Remember 3 and 6. Normal goods have positive income elasticities, inferior goods have negative income elasticities. So just remember that. So that's important. The determining elasticity, determinants of elasticity. The table lists the characteristics of an item that is elastic, first column, and the characteristics of an item that is inelastic, second column. And the problems that follow, first identify whether the item is elastic or inelastic, then write down the letter from the table that lists the proper explanation. Price elasticity of demand, use the formula for price elasticity of demand to solve these problems. Remember, coefficients below 1 are inelastic, coefficients equal to 1 are uninelastic, and coefficients greater than 1 are elastic. Total revenue test, use total revenue test to solve these problems. Remember, if total revenue moves in the same direction as price, is inelastic. If total revenue stays the same, it is uninelastic. And if total revenue moves in the opposite direction as price, is elastic. So the price elasticity of demand measures how much. So I'll give about 20 seconds left. So quantity demanded responds to a change in price. Yes. So after economic boom, will the demand curve for TVs be more elastic or more inelastic? So more inelastic because they have more income now. So they're gonna be able to buy more TVs. They can, they're because of the economic boom, they have more income. So they can afford TVs more. So they're gonna be able to buy more of it. So it's more inelastic now. So after the intervention of nuclear power plants, will the demand curve for coal power plants be more elastic or inelastic? Hmm. So more elastic because they're going to because nuclear power plants are the substitute, so they're gonna use less coal power plants, and when they use less coal power plants, it will be more elastic. So yeah. So when they use less of something, it's more elastic. So which of the following two goods is most likely to be inelastically demanded? So demand for insulin, because it's more of a need than vitamins. The insulin you need for survival when you're diabetic. Vitamins, they're more beneficial for people as preventative measures. Like it's not like without vitamins, it's not for survival right away. It helps your general health, but it's not for direct survival right now. Insulin is you would need it daily or it's life or death situation. So how does elasticity affect potential revenue for a firm? So if demand for a good is elastic, raising the price could reduce revenue. The reason why is because people are going to buy less of it if you raise the price. So people are going to buy a lot less of it if the demand is elastic, if the price is risen, because they don't need it. If demand for a good is elastic, they don't need the product. It's something like a luxury good, so they don't need it to survive. So raising the price will reduce revenue because they'll figure that they don't have to buy it because they don't need it. So because they don't want to pay the higher price, they know that they don't need it, so they're gonna buy less of it. So demand is almost always more elastic at higher prices and less elastic at lower prices. True or false? So it's true. So when things become higher price, people try to look for cheaper alternatives more often than it's when it's cheap. So if it's a very high price purchase, they're going to be less likely to buy it. So it's more elastic. But if it's a low price purchase, still, it's they're more like they're going to keep buying it. So it's more focused on high priced. So demand is unit elastic if it's less than one. True or false? False. It would be inelastic if it's less than 1. So if the price of a product goes up, the quantity demanded will go down. This follows the economic theory of what? It's a law of demand. The formula for calculating elasticity of demand is what? So the percentage change in quantity demanded over the percentage change in price. Yeah. So the elasticity of demand for tissues is 0.66. This means the demand for tissues is what? So inelastic, yes. So which of the following is not a determinant of demand elasticity? Government spending. The following is a factor that will not cause the demand curve to shift. So price doesn't make the demand curve shift. Anything price related is a move along the demand curve. So yeah, the price of the good will not shift the demand curve. So if the price of McDonald's goes up, the demand curve will not shift. The quantity demanded would decrease, and that would just be a movement along the curve. So anything that if the price goes up or down, that's just a movement along the curve, not a shift for price changes. So which factor causes demand curve to shift in the following situation? Bobby graduated from college and got a good job, so he decided to buy a new 2016 Passat. Income. Yes. So what does this mean? So perfectly elastic demand. So what does this mean? ED is greater than 1. So elastic demand, yes. So what does it mean ED is less than 1? Inelastic demand, yes. Describe your demand for a product if you buy the same amount of it, or just a small amount less after a large price increase. So inelastic, yes. So why does demand generally become more elastic over time? So few people have time to find substitutes and change behaviors. Which of the following is an example of inelastic demand? So Priya wants to go to the season opening game. Tickets to another game cost less, but she still buys tickets for the opener. So it's inelastic demand because she still goes there even if the price is more expensive. So if you choose the one, even when if you choose an option, even when the price is going up, that's inelastic demand when there's a cheaper option available. So how does elasticity affect potential revenue for a firm? If demand for a good is elastic, raising the price can reduce revenue because people will buy less of it because it's more expensive and they don't need it. Which of the following two goods is most likely to be inelastically demanded? It would be demand for fruit because there's no substitute for fruit directly. Fruit is fruit, and there's no substitute for fruit. But tangerines, if you go more specific into types of fruits, so tangerines has many substitutes, so including oranges, clementines. So any fruit, any specific type of fruit is a substitute for tangerines. That's why the demand for tangerines is elastic because there's a lot of substitutes for tangerines, a lot of substitutes for tangerines, but fruit, there's no substitute for fruit. So if you're general, if you go general, if you're talking about fruit in general, there's no substitute. So it's inelastic. So which of the following two goods is most likely to be inelastically demanded? So demand for gasoline in the entire city. Yes, excellent. So which of the following two goods is most likely to be inelastically demanded? Demand for insulin, yes. During the COVID-19 pandemic we are all experiencing now, and the information campaign from the CDC highlighting that bacteria and other organisms cause and spread disease, will the demand curve for soap be elastic or more inelastic? So more elastic because you'll need soap more for this. And after more employers allow employees to telecommute, will demand curve for cars be more elastic or less inelastic? More elastic or more inelastic? So more elastic because you don't need a car anymore because you're